Before I get into the story, I just wanted to say that this this is a disclaimer. This is not my book, nor is it Apple Chips. All credits goes to Valentine's Day Green, and she or he is a great DeviantArt writer. I don't know the gender because I don't know who this person is. But yeah. And this is Prologue, so let's get on with this, and yeah. Hold on. And this also, if you hear any noise in the background, sorry. Okay, sorry, I had to check up on something. I leaned against the wall, clutching my stomach, panting, heavily and feeling numb all over me. My blood was splattered all over me, and I'm pretty sure about a quarter of it was my own, but I couldn't really focus on that. Right now, all I could think about the limp figure laying on the ground in front of me, blood pouring around him. A knife lay on the ground next to his open hand, the glistening blade tinted with red, the same red on my shirt. My stomach hang on. My stomach lurched, I think, L-U-R, yeah, whatever, at the thought that it had come from me. Buddy, I choked, covering my mouth as tears formed in my eyes. Memories flashed by as I stared at his corpse, remembering his bright smile, his deep horse-like laugh. He'd taken me in when I was a little kid, after my parents pretty much abandoned me. We lived alone in the mountains, miles away from other people, with only a computer connecting us to the rest of the world. Even so, we were never lonely. We had each other, and I grew up happy and loved. He was supposed to be my guardian, my protector, and now he was dead. He had tried to kill me. Vomit crept up the back of my throat. I didn't know whether to swallow it or just let it out. Why? Why had he tried to kill me? He had so much fun over the years. Not once did I ever see signs of indicating he didn't like me. There was no abuse, no disconcerting, I think. That's I don't know, I'm not good at these words. I think disconcerting, I don't know, looks or terrifying. Nights. He loves me like his own daughter, and I love him back like a father or uncle. All I could imagine was his arm loving smile as I stared at his face, eyes glazed open with his expression now permanently with pain. At this point, I couldn't hold the vomit back anymore, and I hunched over and puked. Okay, sorry, hold up. His expression now permanently ached with pain. At this point, I couldn't hold the vomit back anymore, and I hunched over and puked. I couldn't understand. That morning he'd been so normal. Then after he left for town to go on his weekly shopping trip, he'd even joke about buying me sexy underwear, and even though I have no need for it. Why he had been covered in blood, when he stumbled out of his pickup truck. Why had he swung that knife at me when I brought him inside to get the first aid? Why had he kept looking at the basement? The basement. My eyes darted over to the door behind his corpse, my breathing still heavy. I had been in there a few times, but not often. It wasn't that I was forbidden to go in there, I just didn't want to. He'd filled it with stuff about monsters and murders and stuff. Buddy was a horror fan. I don't know. Always had been. But he never could get me into as much as him. He spent a lot of time down there watching horror movies and stuff like that. But now I thought about it. He had been going down there more and more. What was the reason? Had he become so obsessed with serial killers and movies that he decided to become one? The thought was ridiculous. If being a horror fan was enough to become a killer, that stuff would have been illegal by now. But the Buddy I knew wasn't murder. Someone I knew would murder someone. He just wasn't a stranger, and not an intruder, and especially not to me. Wiping the vomit from my mouth, I stumbled to my feet, using the wall for support. Sharp pain shot through my side where he stabbed me, but I didn't care. Slowly I approached the door and grabbed the handle, taking a deep breath before I opened and entered the dark abyss. How long had it been since had he last seen the sky? How long since he had been able to roam freely? Those were the questions on Jack's mind as he sat in the corner of the room, arms suspended above his head. Sorry if I don't know. By metal shackles, and his hands cuffed into steel mittens. It had been so long since he'd last held his scalp, so long since he'd last been able to move freely. The human mind could only be idle for so long, and even though he wasn't human anymore, he could still feel what remained of his sanity slowly slipping away. A failed attack had led him getting captured, but instead of being turned over to the police, he expected he'd been chained to his intended victim's basement, with no visible means of escape. The only comfort left was his captor had allowed him to return his mask, only moving it to feed his inhuman prisoner. The door creaked and Jack tensed, listening to footsteps descending the stairs. The scent of blood laced the air, making his stomach growl in hunger. It had been 2 days since his last meal. Since his last meal. Even when it was meager at best. I'm sorry, I'm not the best reader, so saliva gathered the edge of his mouth, the thought of eating, but he didn't look up. He didn't want to look at his capture. captator. I don't know. At least not of his own violation. Violation. That's what. I don't know. The man would come to him on his own anyway, and forced him to look at him. He would tear off Jack's mask despite his struggles, feeding him an organ skewered on a stick in order to stay out of the range of his sharp teeth. That was how it always went. However, the footsteps stopped. For a long time, nothing happened. Finally, Jack slowly raised his head, peering through the black gauze filling his mask. Eye holes to look at his captator. However, instead of the tall man with the beard, he saw the unfamiliar teenage girl staring at him with blue eyes that slowly grew wider. So that's the end of that. As I said, these get pretty long, so I'm only gonna do one chapter a day, but this was only a prologue, so it gives you a gist about the story. So yeah, bye guys. If you like the story, please comment, and sorry for my bad reading. I'm not used to reading out loud, but yeah, bye.